The Human Resources Committee to order. It is 9:45, I'm sorry, 6:45 on January 29th, and we're at the Nashville High School North. In front of you, we have the personnel recommendation dated 1/29 before us. Are there any questions?
Would you like to take the roll, please?
I'm sorry, roll call.
Ms. Timmons? Ms. Timmons, you present?
Present, sorry.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Here.
Mr. Mosher? Mr. Mosher is not with us. Also with us is Dottie Oden, Ms. Hohensee, Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Garino, Dana, Ms. O'Gara. And I'm sorry, Ms. Raymond.
Okay. We have the personnel recommendation dated 1/29/2018 before us. Are there any questions? Being none, could we have a motion to accept the personnel recommendation? Yes, Ms. Van Twyver.
I move we accept the recommendations on the personnel dated January 29th.
Okay, Ms. Van Twyver, a motion to accept the recommendation. Is there a second? Can I second? I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed?
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I second it.
Hey, let's go.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to call the January 29th Nashua Board of Education meeting to order. It is 7 o'clock, and we are at the Nashua High School North Lecture Hall. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Mosher?
Yes, I'm here.
Mrs. Oden?
Here.
Mr. Kaufman? Here. Ms. Raymond?
Here.
Ms. Timmons?
Here.
Ms. Hohensee?
Here.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Here.
Mr. Garino is here. Other attendees, Dr. Mosley?
Here.
Dr. McKinney?
Here.
Ms. Fitzpatrick? And Ms. Sweeney?
Here.
Mr. Gillis?
Here.
And Ms. O'Gara?
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum. I'm going to ask Ms. Fitzpatrick to, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask Mr. Garino to read the prayer, and could Ms. Fitzpatrick lead us in the pledge?
Can we please stand? Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the educational institutions of our beloved city. In our common endeavors, may we find a spirit of unity and understanding which will enable us to face our multiple problems with an objective mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda? Ms. Hohensee?
I would like to remove the special BOE meeting minutes from January 17th.
Okay. We can speak to that now, or we can put it on the agenda for later.
It's items removed from the consent agenda is right below.
Yeah. And that's what you you want to remove. Did you want to speak to that now, or would you like to speak to it later? We're going to put it on the agenda for later, if you don't mind.
Well, I would like to do it in the order which is on the agenda so I can speak to it once you approve the consent calendar, if you don't mind.
Okay. We will remove the special Board of Ed meeting, January 17th, and Ms. Hohensie would like to speak to that now.
Okay. On January 17th, the minutes are inaccurate. I never refused to serve as the board president insists and instructed our board secretary to write in the minutes. I volunteered to serve on multiple committees and a negotiating team. My services were apparently not needed. Others on the board were given favorable committee assignments. That's fine. The board president has the power to marginalize members she does not favor. I understand that. I asked to withdraw from the committee assignments that marginalize my voice. Withdrawing from assignments has been routinely done on this board. Board President Farrington withdrew from the position of NTU negotiating team chair. Mrs. Van Twyver withdrew from the position of policy chair and also from her assignment on Ed Council. My request to withdraw was unanimously confirmed by this board. As such, my name should be removed from those committees. I should not be labeled as refusing to serve. No one in the past was given such a label. I didn't ask to replace anyone who had a favorable assignment. I decided instead to participate at the committee level without a vote, using my voice as best I could to serve my constituents on important issues. Search the minutes and you will see the term refused to serve was never mentioned once during the meeting. Minutes must accurately record what is said at the meeting, not what one person wished she had said. The board president invited this term in retaliation when I did not agree with her committee assignments. I refuse to be bullied.
Ms. Timmons?
Madam Chair, I was at that meeting, and Ms. Hennessy, in fact, said she wanted to be removed. I have a copy of the standing committee minutes here, or the assignment, and she indeed said remove me because she did not like the assignments. Thank you.
Anybody else? You're going to have to wait
That's
until
fine.
every member has spoken. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. I think we owe the President of the Board a debt of gratitude for accommodating all the members' requests for committee assignments. It was fair, it was well thought out, based on the strengths and backgrounds of each member. It is well known that one board member was unhappy because she did not get to be chair of a committee that she wanted, so she refused to serve on any committee. Once again, the board president accommodated her wishes. This board member criticized the committee chairmanship nominations, claiming that the board president nominated inexperienced board members as chairs of the committee. All I have to say is that even a so-called inexperienced board member such as myself understands that it's a privilege to serve, and that being chosen to be on the Board of Education is primarily about getting on with the business of educating our children. It's not about anybody's political agenda. So now you want to go back and rewrite history, and you can't do that because I was a witness and all the other board members were witnesses. So we also have videotape and recording. So we have to be accountable for our words and actions on the boards. We have to set an example as board members. And I think that let the record stand as it is, reflecting the fact that she refused to serve on any committee, and the board accommodated her and voted for all the committee assignments and chairmanships by consent, which means she voted for herself to be removed from committees she had asked to be on. So we're going to have a special election in March, and I think the board ought to give that new member first choice of committee assignment. And then in January 2019, if the board member who refused to serve has a change of heart, she can request committee assignments. But I think the record should stand as it is. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
Mrs. Oden, as chair, has the authorization to make the committee assignments, and they are approved by the board, and we live with the vote, the majority vote. The fact is, it wasn't fair. And let me just say what I had prepared to say later on.
We're talking about the committee assignments, we're talking about the committee chairmanships. I was very clear at the time that I put myself in nomination for the policy chair, in that I thought it might be difficult for Mr. Mosier to assume that responsibility, that the board, or Mrs. Oden had you know, I'll just use the word granted him, because that's your authority to do that. Hasn't attended the first policy meeting, unable to make it tonight. He's here by phone. And I believe that committee chairmanships were given to new members without board experience over existing board members who requested them and had prior experience on those committees. So much for merit and experience being a job qualification. I'm sure this sounds familiar to some. Note that board seniority and experience were conveniently ignored and shunned. Imagine the union outrage if seniority was bypassed on one of their committee assignments. Can anyone spell the word grievance? You must understand that committee assignments were made to control the discussion and outcomes of all board meetings. Assignments were made not to promote discussion or to reach the best decision. Far from it. It wasn't fair. I disagree with you, Mr. Guarino. Thank you.
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a point of information. Historically, it appears that other people have withdrawn from committees. I'm curious about a couple of things. I'm curious if we have had a situation on the board where a person has elected to serve on none of the committees that they were asked to serve on. I'm also curious as to how individuals who are on the board's professional experience outside of the board typically plays in committee assignments. Because I'm aware that some of us came here with a lifetime, or maybe less, of professional experience. And I'm curious about how historically that has played into committee assignments. Thank you.
From my experience, I think past experience and educational and work experience has played a role. I don't think we've had as many new members. We also are down one. So I think that played a part. I looked, and I'll read a statement after, how to form committees that I thought would work most collaboratively, most respectfully, and smoothly to move our district forward. Ms. O'Hensey?
Was that locomotive whistle indicating that Bill wanted to speak first?
I'm sorry. Mr. Mosier, do you want to speak?
I can say over my years of experience on the board and over the election of committees, I have never been disappointed. I have had opportunity to do committee work as I requested. And as the requester, I had never had the opportunity to drop out because I didn't like the assignment. I took what was available, and I worked at it, and I enjoyed it. And that's the only thing I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify one more thing, Ms. Raymond, I want to call you Ms. Richard. I'm sorry. I will say I contacted both former presidents of the board, Mr. Farrington and Mrs. Zeem, and asked them if, filling out the preference sheet, had they seen anybody ask for chair, and neither one of them could remember anybody asking for chair. I have been appointed chair on past times, and I had never requested it. That was something new to me. I had never heard of that before, nor had I seen it. So just to clarify past history.
Thank you. I didn't get any of the requests that I volunteer for, 3 of the committees, and that was fine. I accept that. Why I put in HR chair, which I think I explained to you, was the committee members, for the most part, you saw the meeting today. It was a 15-minute meeting. You just rubber stamped a list of people that you don't know, that you've never seen, and now that they're elected to the district. That's fine, it needs to be done. But I thought as chair, I could open up the process to have the committee do more work, to feel more involved, to re-examine some of our policies. That is why I asked for that position. I had already been on the committee, and I had already, I understood what the job was, and I wanted to take it one step farther. I understand I didn't get what I asked for. I also attended 3 committee meetings this week: policy, curriculum, and HR, which I wasn't on, and I'll continue to serve. But what I'm saying is minutes reflect what was said. If you do a search on those minutes, you will not see the words refuse to serve. You will see the word withdraw, and I'm asking that the minutes accurately reflect what was said, not what someone wished she had said.
So I'm curious then, if the minutes say withdraw, where is it written or said refused?
It was never said.
No, I know, so I'm curious because you had asked that we not adopt the minutes because, did the minutes, someone type up refused? If I were to read them, would it say refused, whereas instead of withdraw? Now I'm confused, sorry.
I'll answer that. Mrs. Oden gave a chart to Jackie Waters to put on the district website. We had attached a chart of her assignments. She could have attached the final results, but instead she put under my name and refused to serve. So that became a public document, and I took offense because that's not what was said at the meeting, and it's not like I'm refusing to serve. I think that I don't want to be a rubber stamp on HR. I attended HR. If I have something to contribute, I'll speak at HR. Same with policy, same with curriculum. I don't have any less interest in any of these issues.
Okay, I would like to speak to this. If you check the latest attachment, I did honor your request to have that word withdrew or withdrawal. I can't remember. I checked it this afternoon. So that has been changed to your wishes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And looking at the personnel recommendations of tonight, we have 16 retirements. I don't see anything controversial about that. I don't see anything a board member could ask about that other than to make the comment, we certainly have a lot of people that have served a lot of time in our district that are retiring, and we wish them good luck. And the rest of the items on the agenda are coaches' appointments, and most of them are people who have coached in the past, who have been evaluated by our athletic director, and there is only one new position, and the person was interviewed by Ms. Gingras and Mr. Mazzaroli and Mr. Handy. So, I just I don't have a lot of concern about that, but I do want to read a statement that I prepared. In my statement at our January 8th organizational meeting, when I was nominated for board president, I stated that I wanted the board to have as much transparency as possible and to do our business with respect. I do not consider removing names from the committee assignment document as being transparent. When I was elected board president, I knew there would be challenges. Sometimes in a leadership role, you have to make decisions that not everyone agrees with. When that happens, one is often criticized, and I accept that fact. As president of this board, I had the responsibility of assigning members to subcommittees using a preference sheet that each member submitted to me. Let me state clearly and unequivocally for the record, every member on this board was given their first choice of committee assignments. As a president, I also had the responsibility of appointing the chair for each subcommittee. I considered members' previous board experiences, as well as members' educational and work-related experience when making chair assignments. My goal was to create a committee structure where members would work together collaboratively, respectfully, and smoothly on behalf of our students, our district, and our community. I will not abrogate my responsibility as president to avoid criticism, nor will I apologize for my decisions. I believe we have a strong committee structure on this board that will serve Nashville well. In conclusion, I would like to ask my fellow board members to vote against changing the January 17th special meeting attachments to ensure transparency on this issue. Thank you.
May I respond to that briefly?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. President, if you had told me that you changed it from refused to serve to withdrew, I would have not had to pull it from consent. When I spoke to you, you said you weren't going to do that. I had no notification. If that's what you've done, then I have no problem with it being on consent.
Can I clarify that when you asked me, you wanted your name removed from that committee assignment sheet, and I told you if I had taken your name off, it would have looked like I did not appoint you to any committees, which would have been wrong.
Fine.
Thank you. Ms. Van Twyver?
Would you entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call, please.
Oops, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Moshe. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman.
I have a question for clarification. Does that include placing these minutes, special minutes, back into the consent agenda and accepting it as a whole?
Yes.
Okay. So roll call for the consent agenda.
Can you, why don't you just say, including the special Board of Ed meeting of January 17th, just to clarify it and to have it in
Okay.
minutes? Thank you.
Including the minutes of the special BOE minutes of January 17th. Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons? Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino is yes. The motion passes to accept the consent agenda.
Communication outside the consent agenda, does anybody have any? Okay. We are now at the public comment section, and I believe we have some people to sign up, that have signed up to speak.
Point of order.
Sorry.
May I ask, one member of the public suggested it was difficult to comment on the contract because the public hadn't seen the contract. Would we want to, if we're going to move that forward to the top, would we want to put public comment after that, after they've heard what's in it? I don't know, I'm just asking the question.
I'm sorry. I don't know if that here's the people that have signed up. I think at this point, maybe if they want to stay until the end, I'm not sure. What does the board feel? I haven't been asked this before.
Well,
Does anybody have any thoughts to this? Ms. Hohensie and then Mr. Guarino?
the predicament is how do they speak to the contract if they wish to speak before we vote on it, unless they get a presentation or see what it is, and then they could speak before we vote. And I don't know if you know how, I mean, you want to adjust it. I'm just presenting the question that was given to me of the predicament that the public is in.
Mr. Guarino?
I think we ought to stick to the agenda and have people speak to what they want to talk about, whatever's on the agenda, and just follow the agenda order.
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. Is there, is the contract considered confidential until it is voted on?
Till it's accepted.
Madam President, may I speak? So the contract has already been shared with the board. The NTU has seen the contract as well, so there's really no secrets out there per se. Certainly, just for the board's consideration, I'm prepared, and the Attorney Clausen is prepared to give an overview of the contract publicly, if that's necessary, and also address any questions if need be. So, Madam Chair, we're certainly ready to go when you see fit, or the board sees fit, to present the contract publicly to the board.
Madam President, the three people that are on that list, are they wanting to speak about the contract? Do we know? They are?
I
Okay, he
don't,
said.
I don't know.
Yeah, NTU president said they are, so.
Okay. Okay.
They want. Okay.
Okay.
Well, then, he definitely knows what the contract is, so let's go ahead.
The other person that would like to speak, are you here to speak on the contract?
Well, I didn't see any agendas out here, and there's no I know that we're going to vote on the contract, but how can the public give their opinion about something if the board hasn't made public and put out there? It wasn't even on your site with the agenda for tonight. I saw that you had 7 minutes at the beginning and at the end of the school district day, they have to go around everywhere. But
Ms. Johnson,
with the agenda.
Get them to use the microphone.
microphone.
No. It wasn't on.
Is that?
It wasn't on the website.
Point of order, the agenda for tonight's meeting is online. I saw it.
Excuse me, Mr. Guarino. My name is Paula Johnson. I live at 15 Westbourne Drive here in Nashua. There was nothing on there that had anything of the teacher's contract.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I was just told, because the contract has not been ratified
Okay.
by the board yet, we cannot speak to it.
Okay, so then, obviously, how does the public get to weigh in on it now if, in fact, you're going to vote on it tonight and it has not been made public? So that means it would have to really go back to your next agenda, your next meeting, so the public has the right to speak on it.
Dr. Mosley?
So, a couple things. Mind you that I have a pretty good sense of what the contract feels like for the NTU, and so part of the agreement in presenting the contract to the public, the general public, and I say to the NTU and to the board, is that number one, that today, at a certain time, I think it was after 4 o'clock, Adam Marcoux and his leadership team presented the contract to the union. That contract was presented in a way where we agreed, as part of the tentative agreement, that we would present the contract to our constituents, in this case, the board. So Adam went first with his leadership team, presented all of the tenets of the contract, talked with them about the contract, and then they took a vote.
I get
We are
that.
going to...
I get that. I understand
Can I
that.
just answer your question?
Yep.
So today, once we go through this agenda, or we can move it up or around, I will do the same thing to the board. And the board will then take a vote whether or not they want to accept the contract. They also will have an opportunity to ask questions about the content of the contract and the details of the contract. So both sides, in this case it's the board, in this case it's the school district, and the NTU agreed that they would present the contract today to both of our respective parties.
Okay. I used to sit on the Board of Education, so I have a pretty good understanding, and I used to go to a lot of meetings. Mrs. Oda and I became best of friends when she was on the board many years ago before she came back. That does not give the public the right to view the contract and come in and speak on it at the board before you vote on it. The public has a right to see the contract, and the public has a right to voice their opinion on the contract at the school board level also. So you and the union got a chance to discuss it. It's going to come before the board, but you're probably going to go into non-public, or is it going to be a public meeting?
Madam Chair, may I react? It's a public meeting.
Okay,
It
but
is
where's the
same-
contract for us to view it, the public?
May I you're asking me questions and you're interrupting me. So I'll let you speak, and then once you're done speaking, I'd be more than happy
Go
to
right
address
ahead.
your
I
question.
asked my question again. Where does the public have the right to view this contract at this board meeting that they're going to vote on it?
May I react?
Sure.
So we will give a presentation. Myself, the attorney, Tom Clausen, will talk to the board in general, and not just talk to the board in general, but it will be a public meeting and a public discussion around all of the components of the contract. Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, Year 4, some contract language that was put into the agreement, and then the board will have an opportunity to ask questions. It's the same process we followed the last time when the contract actually didn't pass. So there's nothing that has changed since, well, I'm sorry, I hope something has changed. I hope that actually the NTU has voted on it and it passed, to be honest with you. So if you could be patient with us, have us go through that process, the same process that we followed the last time, and then if you have specific questions about the contract, specific questions about payments, specific questions about language, we'd be more than happy to do it. So let us, once the board decides to say, okay, let's have that discussion around the contract, whether we're going to approve it or not, have us go through that process. We're more than happy to answer any of your concerns.
Okay, let me ask this question. So after you give your presentation, I, member of the public, Mrs. Taxpayer here, will have the right, if I have a question after the whole thing's done, before you vote on it, but you see, the public comment period is then done with. The only time I can come back and ask another question is at the end of the meeting, and at that point in time, you will have voted on the contract, and I will not have been able to ask the specific questions that I might have on this contract. So your theory is great, but it does not give the public the participation that they should be entitled to. Ask the question after the contract is presented for us to review and ask the question. Because it is my tax dollars that's going to have to be put in the pool of everybody else's tax dollars to help pay for the contract. And when language is put in, my biggest question would be, what, if you're giving, what are they giving back? And I understand contracts. It's a 4-year contract. Nobody knows the way the economy is going to go. Hopefully it's going to be a good economy. But nobody knows. So you've locked the city into 4 years on a contract, not knowing where the district is going, where the money is going to come from, if the economy is going to be good or not. So those are my concerns.
Can I just remind you, I know that you served on the Board of Aldermen. Let me remind you, when this contract has been ratified, if it is ratified tonight, it will go before the Board of Aldermen. You will be able to see the contract and all of the information that comes with it, and you certainly can go to the aldermanic meeting and speak at that meeting.
Well, you know, Mrs. Oden, my life doesn't revolve around these meetings anymore. I have other things in my life. And I didn't come really tonight because of the contract. I heard about it after the fact. I came up tonight really about a board member's attitude, which we're going to discuss later, that was on Facebook. It's really defamation of character and rudeness that a public official never, ever, ever puts on anything publicly, because it never really gets deleted. Pictures can be taken of it. So we're going to discuss that later.
Okay?
But here's my question. I'm sitting and watching around the board. Who's taking minutes of the meeting?
It's recorded.
But by law, you're supposed to take minutes also, under the right to know law. Remember when it was a non-public and Mrs. Shaw got into trouble for not taking minutes of a meeting? I believe, under the right to know law, you're supposed to have a backup in case the recording fails, under the right to know law. I just want to say, as sitting here tonight and looking at this board, and I served on many contentious boards in my time, even as a state rep, when I was on the Democratic side of the party, when I was a state rep. Never in my life have I seen what I'm seeing here. I mean, you could feel the tension in this room. There's not even 1 ounce of good, positive energy in this room. It's all negative. And this is what we're displaying with the kids in this district. It is really sad that this is the way it's happening. And it's the attitude. You know, people came on this board that didn't know other people on the board. And people should be getting along here. And the fact that two people on that side, and when I watched the first meeting on what went on here with the voting on the president and so forth, you could just see the line was just drawn in the sand already. It really was, and it's really sad. And like I said, the boards I sat on with Streeter, and when I sat on the board when Giuliano was here, and you remember Mr. Giuliano, you were on the board, I believe, when he was here. And the people I served with, I thought I was going to be hung all the time. But you know what? You have to compromise somewhere along the line. You don't have to give up your principles. You don't have to give up what you believe in. But for the good of the district, sometimes you just have to make that compromise to get things done. And I don't really see anybody on this board that really
Point of
wants-
order.
There's no point of order on public comment. There is no point of order on public comment. There's no point of order on public comment.
Madam President.
There's no
these-
point of order.
These public minutes in the beginning, she's supposed to speak to the agenda. That's
I
what
don't
it's in.
have an agenda.
Excuse me, I'm speaking to the
You
president.
can't do
to the
it. There's
president.
no point of order.
Madam President,
Excuse me.
in the
Robert's
beginning,
Rules of Order, there's no
she is
point of
supposed
order.
She is supposed to speak to the agenda at the beginning. These public comments are for the
No
agenda.
point of
Am I
order.
correct
There's
or
no
not?
point of order, Elizabeth.
Ms.
There's
Ms.
no
Van
point of,
Twyver,
there was
Ms.
no
Van Twy-
agenda. There was no agenda here. There's no point of order. And I'm just saying what I say here.
I-
That's okay.
I
That's okay. I'll deal with him after.
I
At the end, I will
apologize
deal
that
with-
there was no
We'll deal with him at the end.
extra agendas here.
There was no agenda.
Did anybody get an agenda that was there? There were none. I apologize. We will make sure that we do have agendas. Sorry,
Madam President,
Ms. Van Twyver.
I believe that this meeting's agenda was posted. Tara never makes a mistake on that. So if you were interested in what was going on tonight, you could have gone to the place where it was posted.
Excuse me, Ms. Johnson, you're out of order. I'm sorry, but you're out of order. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. Madam President, is it possible, can we suspend the rules to provide any member of the audience who needs a copy of the agenda, who would like to see a copy of the contract before Dr. Mosley and Mr. Clausen present, so they'd have a chance to review and perhaps ask questions? Can we suspend the rules to enable questions before the board votes?
I believe Ms. Johnson was handed, I think Dr. McKinney handed her an agenda, and no, I don't think we can suspend the rules until, I don't think we can suspend them. I think we have to ratify the contract before we can do that. And
To
we
Mrs.
will all have
Johnson's
this-
point, though,
the
it does make
presentation.
sense. The public should have the public should have a right to comment on it before we approve it.
As I said, she will have the opportunity to do that at the Board of Aldermen, when it goes to the Board of Aldermen, after it's been ratified. Mr. Greeno?
I read the procedures for the Board of Education, and there are two public speaking periods. The first period is for the public to speak about anything on the agenda, and then the second time, then you can speak about anything in general. And I don't know, Ms. Van Twyver knows the rules better than I do, and she can back me up or tell me that I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. Okay.
So the speakers, people who want to speak on the agenda, that's what this time is for right now. It's not about to take over our meeting and to, I don't know, talk about all other kinds of stuff.
Mr. Marcoux, would you like to speak?
Adam Marcoux, 4 Jalori Lane, and President of the Nashua Teachers Union. I met with the membership today, reviewed our contract proposal. I had 619 members present. Of those present, 567 voted in the affirmative, 52 voted in the negative, and the contract was ratified by the membership. The membership also unanimously, minus one vote, that was a voice vote, voted to return to committees, and that will be as soon as those are restarted. I would like to remind the board that committees are voluntary and are outside of the contractual day. I'd like to thank the Board of Education's team and central office staff for working through this with us. I'd like to thank my executive board for their support and wisdom throughout the process. To my negotiating team, who spent over 100 hours negotiating this contract since we started back last January, of whether it was a meeting with the negotiating team from the board or our own internal meetings, and my membership for coming out, voicing their opinions and taking part in the process. And I look forward to moving this forward to the Board of Aldermen for ratification as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is
I
there-
have comment.
Oh, can you just wait until I see if there's anybody else who would like to speak who didn't sign up, Mr. Mosier?
Yes,
Okay,
okay.
thank you. Is there anybody out there who did not sign up who would like to speak to anything on the agenda? Seeing none, thank you. Mr. Mosier?
Yes, I'd like to compliment you on keeping your cool throughout this very distasteful outburst.
Okay.
But as far as the contract is concerned, it's grateful that the NTU has ratified it, but at the same time, we are thinking about now it's being presented to us for ratification. And as such, we own that contract until it's ratified and passed on to the aldermen, who take it under advisement that we have the ratification of the NTU, we have the ratification of the board, and it goes to the aldermen for its final touches to make it into, what would we say, make it into the law of the land, so to speak.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mosier.
Own that until we pass it on to the aldermen. It is not, open to the public. It is not. It is a public document, but not until after we sign it. Once we sign it and pass it on to the aldermen, then it becomes the aldermen's property, and they are the ones that have to do the final ratification.
Okay, thank you. We are now at Superintendent's Comments. Superintendent Mosley.
Hi, thank you. I will keep my comments brief as we have a lengthy agenda. A couple things going on in the district. We are, as has been mentioned before, we negotiated a contract with a NTU. We're very excited about the recent developments, and we'll certainly get more into that later. Currently, we're also engaged in contract negotiations with the Principal Association, and we're eager to make some more progress on that as well. I'd like to start by reading something that came across the communication from the state of New Hampshire Department of Education. I'd like to give great credit to Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Donna Fitzpatrick, and her leadership on selecting the right candidates for our programs. And I certainly appreciate your leadership on that, Donna. I'll start by just reading a little paraphrase of this, and I won't get into it anymore. Dear Amanda, thank you for your proposal for the grants to provide service to prepare students for non-traditional careers in the RFP. The proposal review team enjoyed reading about the CTE centers and the students who are attending it, who are focused on everything we do at the Bureau. We can see clearly the connections between your planned projects in the development of a drone photo video course and the intended outcomes of increasing female enrollment in the engineering program. We are pleased to award you funds in the following amount of close to $10,000. I want to thank Amanda Bastoni, for her work and the Career Center. I am more and more pleased with that selection as our CTE director than anything else. But more importantly, it was her vision that she expressed during the interview process that she was going to start a drones course. And certainly this is one step forward in securing funding, a grant, on the total of $10,000 to move the district forward. I want to thank her publicly. If he was here right now, I hope he's watching in some way or another. I'm going to send her an email with this attachment here. Dr. Maritaki was very excited about the drones course and his experience with that. So by far, I'm really pleased. And thank you, Donna Fitzpatrick, for again, really finding Amanda and the leadership team on that as well. Finally, you know, we had to reschedule public forums of Mosey's with Muffins and talking with community members. We've rescheduled that because of our delay, and that will take place on February 5th, 2018 at 9 a.m. at Fairgrounds Middle School. So I've rescheduled that event. I know there are some people out there in the public that have contacted central office to ask about that event. So I wanted to just say thank you, and that's all I have to share right now, but I'll be back.
Thank you. Are there any members who would like to respond to Dr. Mosley's commentary? Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. Dr. Mosley, I'm very disappointed in the quality and the content of the teacher's contract information communicated to the board. The TA announcement was issued by Ms. Timmons on Thursday, January 19th. The board didn't receive the agreement until Friday, the 26th, 8 days later. Sadly, I've identified 9 flaws within the contract in the way it was communicated to the board. Number 1, I do not understand why you and Ms. Timmons delayed the release and discussion of the contract for a week. I do not understand why a board meeting was not held to explain the contract and discuss it before tonight. The contract document is in draft, not final form. The summary spreadsheet contains mathematical errors. The contract was not proofread before it was sent to the board, as evidenced by text errors, numerous text errors. The board did not receive a summary sheet of contract provision changes. There was no explanation what the negotiations accomplished and why. There was no explanation of how these salary increases would be paid for over the term of the contract. And lastly, there was no explanation of the salary grid, the changes made to it, and why. How is the board supposed to make informed decisions without this basic contract information? I hope these oversights won't occur with future contracts and that this information will be available before the vote tonight. Thank you.
Ms. O'Hensey.
Thank you. I would also like to give a shout out to Tammy McGuire, the secretary of our CTE director, who did a lot of the work on writing that grant application. I understand she put in many hours. I have 2 quick issues. I received another report from a distraught parent over a teacher bullying her child in classroom over grading. This conscientious student was told that he would get a reputation for being a grade grubber if he continued to care about his academic progress and his assessment results. If he were a struggling student, it would be a completely different story. His concerns would be quickly addressed, he would be allowed to redo his assessments, and his enthusiasm for academic achievement would be applauded. Yes, this is discrimination. Our students are not being treated fairly. It is disappointing that the board and the administration has failed to address these concerns, so I felt obligated to give voice to this issue once again. Competency-based grading is not being fairly implemented. It demoralizes conscientious students, it is not equitable, and I'm ashamed that the district allows this situation to continue. However, I told the parent that it's unlikely there would be any resolution to this bullying. My second issue. I was disappointed to receive more reports this week from parents who wanted to register their children for half-day kindergarten, but were given no help from the district. Our kindergarten registration package only offers a full-day program. It fails to mention a half-day option, even though state law requires us to do so. RSA 188:48-C, Kindergarten Grants, Section 2. A school district or charter public school that operates an approved full-day kindergarten program for which it receives funding under this section, that's Keno funding, shall permit a student to attend kindergarten for a half-day. Parents should be offered this option. It's required by state law. In Nashua, parents can only register their child for a full day and then pull them out after a half day, knowing that their child will slip behind academically each and every day because there is no accommodation for half-day students. It's one-size-fits-all program. It's very disappointing. The district is deliberately bullying parents into accepting an all-or-nothing full-day program.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes, I want to thank you, Dr. Mosley, about the drone class.
Is that nice? Yeah.
That's so exciting, and I'm sure that Dr. Murataki's just flying high right now himself.
Yeah, sure.
And I would like to remind this board that this time is a response to what you have presented and not presenting more information, complaints. I think we need, just as the public can only speak to the agenda, this time is the time that you speak to what Dr. Mosley has said. We have a period when we give our comments at the end of the meeting when this could be brought up, and I'd just like us to keep to the agenda if we could. Sorry about that. I kind of got off the subject too, but.
No, I thank you. It was very appropriate. Mr. Guarino?
I just want to say, give kudos to former board member Dr. Murataki also, and I want to commend the administration on carrying that forward.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Timmons?
No comment at this time.
Okay. Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I am also very excited about this new drone program. It sounds wonderful. And I'm curious, you have scheduled some times for the board to visit the schools. Mrs. Timmons and I started that today. Yeah. I noticed that Wednesday you have time for the South Technology Center. Is that where this exciting program is going to be happening? Can we ask about that, or is that completely different?
No, so we actually have, it's a couple things. It's at the north right now, because that's where Amanda is located, and we're just starting to build the program right now. So we got some funding to start that process. It's likely, and again, I'm ambitious, that this will be up and going sometime next year. So the course is being developed this year in preparation for full activation next year. Did I get that right?
The plan at this point is to have the course in the fall as a pilot, and then we're anticipating success, and then moving forward to incorporate it into the program.
And just some point of clarification, it's always contingent upon enrollment, so we're hoping that we get some excited high school, does that, why don't I stop talking? Sometimes the best people to answer something about students is actually students, so I'll be quiet. Haley and Patrick, what are your thoughts on that drone course? Thank you, Haley.
Well, I can tell you that from my experience, and we have a lot of people enrolled in our photography programs. We have a lot of people enrolled in our robotics and mechanics programs. So I predict that will be very successful, especially as drones are becoming more and more popular as time goes on. So I think you'll see success.
I personally wish I could fit that course in my crazy schedule, but I do have other friends that have never had an interest in courses like marine robotics or something, and then just suddenly got put into it and really enjoyed it, so I think it'll be a hit.
Well, with that said, certainly we're anticipating, high enrollment or, large students enrolling in the classroom, and so we'll see. We're excited. Anytime you start something new, you can always have, either it's a home run or you strike out. So I think we're onto something. So Thank you. We'll keep you posted. We'll actually come back and give a report back in the fall. And who knows, we might even get a demonstration. Annie up on that.
I, too, would like to thank Ms. Fitzpatrick, Ms. Bastoni, and if possible, could we send a copy of that letter to Dr. Moritaki? I think he
I'd love
certainly
to.
would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, student board members, do you have any comments?
I
Oh,
have to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mosier. Oh, I am so sorry.
It's all right, I understand. But my comment is very short. I'm going to be very sweet, but not going to be make some people happy. Whatever happened to the chain of command? All of a sudden, we see that everybody is complaining to a board member, and the board member comes into the board and complains that, oh, well, they're doing this and doing that, and they're bullying this and bullying that. I don't know why this is the case. Why are we not taking it to the place where it belongs? When somebody complains to us, we can take it to the teacher, we can take it to the principal, we can take it to the superintendent, but it's not up to the board members to justify these things and to give appeasement to the parents. The parents have to realize that they have to go along with the chain of command also. That is why the thing is going to work. Otherwise, we're getting into confusion again. And I don't think it's a good idea to keep on going down this road.
Thank you. Sage advice. Ms. Sweeney, do you have any comments to make?
I would like to start by saying me and my fellow students are all very excited for the idea of a teacher's getting a contract, and by seeing the majority that were in favor of it, it gives us hope, because we believe that, happy teachers will make happy students. We think they teach better when they are happy. But my major comment is on the minutes. I know we haven't talked about it yet, but the proposal for 7 minutes to beginning and the end of the school day. And I know that there is a stereotype of teenagers not being very good in the morning, and it's not always wrong. And maybe, I know last year we did the 14 minutes at the end of the day, and I feel like maybe for us it might be better, especially since a lot of us have trouble getting to school on time anyway. But that's all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gillis?
I wasn't planning on talking about that right now, but I would like to second what she just said about the 7 minutes to the beginning of the school day. I think it's really hard for a lot of high school students specifically to get to school by 7:20, and never mind the 7 minutes that are proposed to get to school even earlier than that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I would like to have a motion to suspend the rules to address items on the agenda out of order.
Are you asking for one?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules so we can address items out of order.
And I second that.
Second? Okay. It's going to have to be a roll call. Okay.
Wait, discussion.
Just a minute, we have to, we have to have a roll call vote.
Roll call vote to suspend the minutes. Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
And Mr. Guarino is yes. The motion carries to suspend the minutes. And, the count was, I'm sorry, was 7-1.
Motion carries. Okay. I said the motion carried. Okay. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. The reason why I voted against suspending the rules to change the order of business was I thought we discussed this already. Mr. Guarino made a passionate case for sticking with the agenda, and I thought that's what we were going to do. So I'm a little bit taken aback and surprised that the previous conversation is kind of forgotten, and now we're suspending the rules to do what was suggested earlier, which we said we wouldn't do. So we didn't vote, so I'm just confused, that's why.
Well, if you look in the audience, I believe we have some people here that are here for a particular item on the agenda, and it's quite far down, and out of respect for them, I thought it appropriate to suspend the rules so that they could listen to the presentation and hopefully see a vote by the Board of Education. Thank you. Okay. Dr. Mosley, would you like to start your?
Sure. Can you just give us a couple seconds to set up?
We're going to need a motion.
Going to use this overhead?
We need a motion to bring this to the floor.
We need a motion.
I would like to make a motion to bring to the floor on our agenda.
Here it is.
Recommendations to approve the tentative agreement between the Nashua Board of Education and the Nashua Teachers Union dated September 1st, 2017 to August 31st, 2021.
Second.
Second that.
Okay.
Discussion? I want to ask a question.
Mr. Kaufman?
So is this is a public session, we're not going into non-public tonight?
No.
We will be voting in public tonight? And the discussion that we
My-
have?
My understanding.
This is what I want to understand. So the discussion before the board tonight, going forward, from this point forward, will be in public? That's my question of the chair.
My understanding from Attorney Clausen is yes, it will be in public.
Okay, so is Mr. Donovan going to join us?
He was at a meeting at City Hall. We thought he would be here by 7:30. I believe it is the Capital Improvements Committee that he had to attend tonight, and he will be here as soon as possible.
So why didn't, I guess thank you for the information that was just handed to us. Why didn't we get this in the packet, would be my question. Thank you.
Dr. Mosley?
All you're seeing is another iteration of what was in the packet. It's just a summary. That's all it is. It's nothing that has changed, that wasn't put in the board packet. All the financial numbers are part of the tentative agreement with the NTU.
With all due respect, Dr. Mosley, these are very different documents. None of these 5 sheets of paper were in our packet. We, as board members, did not see these papers as part of the review packet.
That's not what I'm...
But the information may repeat itself, but the fact is, this is a new handout to us. The board has not seen this. I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay. So a couple things. First of all, thank you for, can everyone see that? So one of the things that, and for many of you who have gone through this process before, this is something that has, we presented, the last time we talked a little bit about our tentative agreement, and certainly we thought it would be helpful for the new board members to kind of get a sense of where this contract, addresses and why the, just trying to see this here. Okay. I can just go. Okay, so it's important to know and have a sense of where I'd say the backdrop of this contract. And so part of this contract or this tentative agreement, really stems from a long history of the teachers really making some concessions when the district was in some financial peril. Also, too, certainly, the teachers have, in my opinion, certainly have sacrificed. They certainly have taking pay reductions in a way where, if you look at, for instance, in 2011 and 2012, all that was added to their salaries was $250 to their annual salaries. In 2012 and 2013, they had just $625 added to their salaries. 2013, 2014, there's $1,140 added to their salaries. In 2014 through 2016, just the teachers advanced one step. In 2016 to 2017, the teachers received $750 in their overall pay. My understanding was that there was another, in 2016 and 2017, the teachers also had another $250 baked into their salaries. So this gives a history of, I would say, the challenges of the teachers' salaries, the challenges that were facing the district, and the challenges that were faced negotiating this contract. The fact that some of these steps, and I'm looking back to 2011 and 2012, did not even meet COLA, cost of living for some of the teachers, is certainly something that I want to say thank you to the NTU for really putting our kids first during through all these years. So, essential questions when you're looking at this contract is a salary explanation. In addition to all of that, you also have a situation where we had teachers on steps that did not match their experiences. And so if we just highlighted one situation where it was step 5, but yet you had teachers that had 9 and 10, 11 and 12 years of experience. And this is the old contract, the old pay grade. So in essence, you had teachers that had 9 years of experience that would continue to be on step 5. Excuse me. You also had teachers that had, you just jumped down looking at that, they were on step 6, but they had 14 years of experience. And that presented a challenge for a variety of reasons. Number one, it took, in this case, if you look at step 5, it took some teachers 4 years to get down to step 6. The other thing that happened is that we also had teachers that, because they were in the middle, no, I'm fine. We also had teachers that, and we had teachers who were stuck on those steps, and as a result of being stuck on those steps, they were seeking employment other districts, because other districts were willing to put them on the steps according to their years of experience. Welcome, Dan. So, what this new tentative agreement does, and it's not perfect by no means, we recognize that. What this tentative agreement essentially does is that it attempts to match teachers' teaching experiences according to their years of experience. So this is what you're looking at in terms of the 2017-2018 reconfiguration of the teacher salary scales. And that, what we did is that we actually took the teaching experiences of teachers and put them on the correct steps. Now, it's not perfect. It's something that we wanted to make sure that we honor the teachers' salaries according to their years of experience. And so you have teachers at step 9 who are making more than teachers that are on step 8. And so this is our attempt to certainly rectify the steps and experiences that were plaguing the former contract or in the current contract. So this is what I would say a snapshot. This is, again, a snapshot of what the first year looks like. So this past year, right, you have a teacher that has a master's plus a master's on step 5. They make $51,691. And so with that said, if you look down, you can see that that teacher has been placed on the proper step. So those steps have been eliminated or broken out to where if you are on step 5 or were on step 5 and you have 9 years of experience, you are making you're making less than a teacher that makes, actually it's better to start the other way. If you have 12 years of experience and you have 54,000, you're making more than a teacher that has 11 years of experience. If you have 11 years of experience, you're making more than a teacher that has 10 years of experience. If you have 10 years of experience, you're making more than a teacher that has 9 years of experience. What I want to point out to you, if you look at all of the new configurations for 2017 and 2018, the salary scales, the salary schedule, you can see that there's a progression according to years of experience. So each time you gain years of experience in the Nashville Public Schools, you are going to be making more money or making more money than the previous years. You are not going to be stuck on a step. And that was a change in the salary. I mean, that was a major change in this tentative agreement. So this 4-year tentative agreement benefits our district because it allows us to, what I say, start the path of paying teachers what they're worth. And I believe that this is a nice contract in doing so. I don't think we're wasting money. I don't think that there's money that's being wasted in any way. Our teachers work time and time again with our kids. They're working not just 7 to 8 or during school hours. They're working beyond the school hours. They're here with our kids, and I've been to the schools on Saturday and Sunday. So this is an attempt to say thank you, and we're on the right path to making this right for you. This 4-year agreement gives us a sense of reliability and connectivity to, in some ways, for our kids and our parents. It also provides us some stability in the district in a sense that for so long, for so many years, there was a sense of, what am I going to be making the next year? As we saw in the previous slides, 1 year was $250. The next year was $650. 1 year you got a step. Another year you got $1,000. There was 1 year you didn't even get a raise, but you got $650, but $250 was baked into your salary. In my opinion, you don't treat people that way. Mortgages don't get paid that way. Car payments don't get paid when you don't know how much money you're getting. We recognize that. Finally, it gives the school board an opportunity, and I think what I would say, it gives us an opportunity to provide us with some peace in this district, to understand that this is important to us, it's important to our kids. I think, Haley said it best, that our teachers are happy that they are able to have some type of stability in what they're expecting in their pay, but also, too, this great work that's going on in this district. We're able to go back to our committee work. We're able to talk about students. We're able to plan our budget in a way that we know how much this teacher salaries are going to be for the next 4 years. That's incredible. And so I ask the board to not miss out on this opportunity. I ask the board to do it in the spirit of peace, but also this is the right thing to do for our educators. They deserve it. Thank you. I can certainly entertain questions or comments on the current TA that was agreed with the teachers. And I just say not myself, but certainly Attorney Clausen, Dan Donovan, Dana O'Gara. We'd be more than happy to talk to the board about this. I'll defer to Madam Chair on that. I'd be more than
Yes, I believe we are at that point now, Mr. Kaufman.
Okay, thank you. I did a lot of work on the weekend and looked at this, having been on the committee up until the last meeting. Dr. Mosley, that which was just handed out to us has slightly different numbers than what we received over the weekend. You did say they were essentially the same. There's a fair amount of background information in here, but I do want to point out that there are some inconsistencies, especially in year 4. On the sheet handed to us in the packet that we received on Friday, FY21, the base salary increase, it says, was 1.5%. In the document you handed out today, it says 2.31%. Now, I will acknowledge that based on the calculations that were in the spreadsheet, 2.31 is the correct percentage, but I didn't know that until I had to reverse calculate and figure out what was wrong. So, and that was when I calculated a $500,000 error in that column, which I'm concerned about the spreadsheet that we received over the weekend. That would greatly impact the numbers at the bottom of the spreadsheet in terms of overall cost and average cost per employee. So at a minimum, I think we need to see an updated spreadsheet that we were given over the weekend. My next question has to deal with how will the increases be paid for in each year of the contract?
Mr. Donovan?
Okay, to speak to Mr. Kaufman's first question, the spreadsheet that has 1.5, the way the spreadsheet works is the numbers on the line 10, I believe it is. Those are the correct numbers. Those are the numbers that calculate down to the bottom of the spreadsheet. The top number, not exactly, that's just a plug number, 1.5%. It doesn't affect any calculation on the spreadsheet. I can send you the spreadsheet if you doubt me, but I can tell you that the numbers that calculate down to give you the average cost per employee are based on number 10, not upon the top.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you.
And then
So-
I'm going to go to another member after you that has questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, so think about the time I spent on the weekend when I realized all these were wrong and how much time was wasted and thought went into trying to understand this sheet, that a simple explanation
They
would have
weren't all
come
wrong,
forward.
Mr. Kaufman.
I'm sorry?
One number was wrong, and
Actually
right, not
not.
all of them.
Actually not. The FY20 number at 1.8 is actually 1.78.
Yeah, that's called rounding.
But it produces the wrong math, sir. And it's very...
It's just, that's how we show this form. We've shown this form with the rounding to 1 for the longest time. It does not change the math at the bottom. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It'll continue that math right on down to the bottom.
I'm just pointing out that, not pointing that out to us, that this top, these were placeholders, just cost at least me a lot of time. I do have additional questions, happy to yield the floor for now.
Mr. Mosier, do you have any questions, comments?
Not at this time. I'm following the thing. I have great confidence in the numbers, but I have not analyzed it thoroughly.
Any other members have comments? Ms. Hohensee?
I've got some questions about the tables. The new information that we're given tonight is what I had asked for and didn't get when but there's some either errors in this sheet or errors in the table. They don't match up. Like if you go to Appendix A3, you look at line 14, there was a $4,000 to $4,500 increase. That's not mentioned on your summary sheet. The first 3 are 4,000 increase. The last 3 are 4411, 4499, 4050. So I'm wondering why the irregularity? Are they mistakes, or is that what was intended?
Ms. O'Gara?
Mrs. Hohensie, can you clarify what you're looking at for us?
Appendix A3. You say,
In the contract?
in the proposed contract, yes. You say that you are giving
Line number, give us that.
2,000 for step 13 to close the gap. That's fine. But you don't mention in line 14 that you're also closing a gap, apparently, because I see a 4,000 increase in the first 3 columns and up to 4,500 in the next 3 columns.
So,
May I speak?
sure.
If you look at this chart, this is a comparison of the TA before in September and the TA now in January. And you're looking at Appendix A3, which is year 3. And in the TA in September that we had, that TA had the smoothing of step 14. And that's still there, but in addition, if you look down the column, it says January 2018, there was 2,000 added for step 13 as well.
Okay, but nowhere in here does it mention the 4,000 for that line. And my question is, was it supposed to be straight across the board? Or why do we have one at 4411, 4499, and 4050 instead of 4,000 even? Was this deliberate, or is it?
What line
just
are
re-
you looking on A3?
They're looking at line 14 of A3.
Line 14.
I'll ask a different question while you look that up. On A4,
So,
Excuse me,
Mrs.
can we just
Hohensie-
stay with this one and let her?
I didn't want to pressure her to finding that.
But I don't want her to be distracted by another question. Thank you.
Mrs. Hohensie, the steps are renumbered and they move.
Yes.
So if you're taking step 14 in year 3 and comparing it to year 2, that's different because teachers are we renumbered the steps.
I know that.
Okay.
I've followed the chart. It's accurate. Those were the irregularities. Everything else is as it's said on the summary sheet. I'm asking why the discrepancy on the end of 14. Was it deliberate? If so, fine. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I know she knows that, but
So
can I
you're
just
s-
ask you for further clarification? So if we look at step 14 in the bachelor's, which is 57,309, what number in year 2 are you comparing that to?
That's a $4,000 increase.
From what step in year 2?
Would be from 13.
From 13. Yes. Because on top of it, we added 2,000. 54, 250.
My question is, most of them were round
With
numbers.
others, so they were smoothed.
So
that-
smoothing wasn't just a round number straight across the step, it was,
That smoothing that happened
yeah.
that was in the original TA that you and Mr. Kaufman were there for in September. Those numbers were in that TA.
Okay. Then I'll ask the other question.
Excuse me, can we just give another member a chance?
It's a quick one, and it's the same type of question.
Well, maybe another member has a quick one also. Is there anybody else? Okay, I'm going to go back to Mr. Kaufman, and then Ms. Hohensie, if you have your question, then we can do that. Mr. Kaufman?
I'll let Ms. Hohensie stay on this since it's
Okay.
some consistency, and then
Okay.
I'll,
Thank
if
you.
it's okay with the chair,
Ms. Hohensie?
take my slide.
In
if-
year,
It is.
in
Thank you.
year 4, A4, you mentioned there was $14.50 increase per cell, except for Steps 12 to 14, they got 2,700, again, smoothing out that middle part that was a deficit. Step 0 got 600, and 2 steps got 1,000. Also, I noticed on step 1, there were 2 places that got 1,500 instead of 1,450. I'm just asking, was it deliberate? Because there's no mention of it.
Mrs. Hohensie, which numbers are you specifically looking at?
It would be the PhD and the nurses. It looks to me that they got 1,500 instead of the 1,450. They were just anomalies. If that was the intention, that's fine, but it's not noted in the summary.
So you're, Mrs. Hohensie, you're looking at step 1 for the BA and looking at the nurses and seeing the $50 difference?
It would be the 5-PhD and the all nurses on step 1. They got, from my calculations, they got 1,500. Everyone else on the chart was noted accurately in the summary. So if that was the intent, that's fine. I'm pointing it out because I don't know if it was intentional.
The PhDs are identical to the year 4 that I have. I do see an error in step 1 of the nurses of 41,784, but the PhD is exactly as my chart.
That's your 1450 here, it's 15, so you caught it.
Okay.
Well, I was saying it was over here.
Are you finished, Ms. O'Gara, explaining that?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan, did you have added comment to that? Did you? No? Okay. Is there anybody else who has a question?
I,
Oh,
right,
okay.
I gave up my spot and
You
I
did, thank you.
held it. How will the increases be paid for in each year of the contract?
For this current school year, fiscal year 18, we have approximately 1.7 million in the budget of the 2.1 million. The thing to remember in these grids, it includes all teachers, even those charged to grants. So the amount in the operating budget doesn't, some of these increases will be charged to grants, not to the operating budget. I estimated that to be about 125,000, and I expect that there is some attrition in here since these numbers are the previous year's numbers. So basically, when I include the attrition, for this year, I'll have to find $100,000 or so from other accounts, which will be somewhat of a challenge, but with over $100 million, I probably can find that. Year 2, it'll be in the budget that we'll share with this board on Wednesday. That the number in this contract is the number that's in the budget. So that's how that will be paid for. Year 3, obviously, we haven't even budgeted for year 3. But that is the lowest amount in the contract. Typically, our teacher salaries are around 56 to 57% of our budget, total operating budget. That number, 1.128, assuming we get 1.75, 1.8% increase in the next couple years' budget, that'll end up being about 57%. So that number's going to be, and that wouldn't even include attrition. So that I'm pretty comfortable with that number for fiscal year 20, and then fiscal year 21. It's 3 years down the road. It's in between fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 19 in total dollars, but assuming an approximate 2% increase in the school budget, I think it'll be fine.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. So my concern is This year's budget, we had a 1.3 spending cap. Next year, the mayor has given us 2.1. So, and that's the first year of the contract's now, because this is retroactive to the beginning of the school year. So year 2 of this contract is really the budget that we're talking about on Wednesday. correct?
Exactly.
So the mayor is giving us 2.1% of money, and we're spending 3%, just over 3%,
No, it's not 3% of the total budget. It's 3% of this budget, which is about 56% of the total budget. So
Okay. Okay, that helps, thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else that has any questions? Mr. Guarino, you haven't spoken yet.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank Dr. Mosley and also Mr. Donovan and Ms. O'Gara for all their hard work, and also Ms. Timmons for negotiating. And I just want to say that everything I saw up here on the presentation was given to us ahead of time. So we had plenty of information ahead of time, and the board was well informed regarding the regarding this contract. And so I hope, all I can say, I think that Ms. Sweeney said it best: happy teachers, happy students. So I'd like to move on.
I'm sorry. Who? Dr. Mosley?
Yes, I just want to interject to give the public a context of some of the challenges of doing such an agreement. Number one, you have teachers coming from different levels of experiences and steps from a variety of places. So there's a level of understanding and flexibility that we've been working closely with the association, the union around just trying to get people on the right steps, because there's a lot. I mean, you have people that are coming in that have, as I shared with you before, I just gave you that snapshot, where they have close to 10 years of experience, but they're on step 5. Coupled with the fact that you also have teachers who are moving because they're earning their master's degree, they're advancing their degree. So not only are they moving steps to begin with this new contract, but they're also moving what we call over to the right more because they're advancing as a result of their degrees. So this is by far, and there's always those outliers of individuals that have varied experiences, whether they were teaching in the classroom or worked as social workers or anything like that. So this is by far a prodigious undertaking that we continue to work on, and certainly that minor glitch there is something that we can certainly address, and it has no bearing on the overall contract. Essentially, compared to the other TA, we had to make some adjustments in year 4 to get this TA approved.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to also remind the public and the board and the NTU that HR had informed the negotiating team that we lose a lot of teachers in the middle row of this salary scale to other states. And that's the other thing that this salary scale was trying to fix, was that we can keep those people that have a lot of experience so that we don't have to retrain a bunch more. And that I have to commend the administration for the work that they put into this scale. I hope that everybody realizes that this was a very, very difficult process to get everybody as close as we could to a decent salary for all concerned. So I think our administration did a remarkable job in helping us to get this contract done.
Thank you. Mr. Mosher, did you have something?
Not at this time. I congratulate everybody for the hard work that they've done. and the smoke is still coming out of my ears when I look at the calculations and realize how difficult it has been, especially with all of the different levels of experience and the degree activities. So I say congratulations.
Thank you. Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I, too, am quite pleased to see the smoothing that we were all talking about. I think it is, I just think it's wonderful that we are recognizing the work that our teachers have done, their years of experience, and we aren't having people who have been here for a number of years floundering and feeling like they don't have a forward momentum. I appreciated the questions about where the money is going to come from over the next couple years. That was very helpful to me. I do have one question left, and that is about the mention of the Cadillac tax under the Affordable Care Act. Are we allowed to talk about that in a public session? Sure. And
Sure.
What happens if that happens? Thank you.
At the risk of putting everybody to sleep. Oh, okay.
Yeah, briefly.
For those, I'll briefly. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Tom Clausen. I'm the attorney that assisted in negotiations. The Cadillac tax, despite what you may have read, still exists. Whether it's going to exist in 3 or 4 years from now is anybody's guess. Basically, what the Cadillac tax does is it sets a threshold level of cost for certain health insurance plans and says if your plan exceeds that threshold level, there's going to be a tax assessed to the amount that the plan exceeds that threshold level by. The problem that creates is one that's shared by both the union and the district, because if there's a Cadillac tax assessed to any of our plans, that causes the premium to go up, and even with a split, I forget what the split is, 80-20 or whatever it is, the district would bear 80% of the Cadillac tax, and the premium paying members of the NTU would be bearing 20% of that. Nobody wants to pay that tax. So the point of the language that we put into the contract was simply to say that if in 3 years from now we're still dealing with the Cadillac tax and we have as a district exposure to the tax, that this gives us a mechanism to sit down, talk about it, and see if we can work out a way that nobody pays the tax. That's all it does. It doesn't obligate the union to agree or change their health insurance plan or to do anything with the plan, but it gives us a mechanism to say, hey, we need to come to the table and address this. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that if there's a 40% surcharge on a premium that people are paying, then there's going to be motivation on both sides to get it fixed. That's all we wanted to do.
Ms. O'Hensey and then Ms. Van Twyver.
I have a question. I understood in the fall that we were going to put in a requirement that the teachers continue to work and provide student recommendations on college applications if we had an extended but ongoing contract negotiations. Was that ever finalized? Because I didn't see that anywhere.
We tried very hard to get that as part of the tentative agreement. The union would not agree to that. Instead, what the union agreed to do and what President Marcoux described to you tonight was that they agreed to have a formal vote to formally go back to committees during the pendency of the ratification process. So we tried for that. They didn't agree to it. We got something else instead.
Thank you.
Ms. Van Twyver.
Mr. Attorney Clausen, I just want to clarify, when if we have to open discussions about the Cadillac tax, that means that nothing else can be discussed. Is that true?
Yeah, the language says it's the agreement is open for the purpose of discussing health insurance only.
Only.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I have a question about renumbering steps. I still don't understand the difference of a step increase and a renumbering of steps, and before you answer, Mr. Guarino, this was one of the questions I had asked that you asked about in an email that I couldn't respond to, but this was, I'm
Excuse
just
me?
trying to point out.
Point of
that-
order, you cannot use another member's,
Okay.
we're not to use another
Forgive me.
member's name
Could you-
and talk to the chair,
Okay,
please.
could someone on the negotiating committee please explain renumber steps as compared to step increases? Because to me, they appear to be the same, and there's a related question here, which is every year going to produce a new step in the contract? Because that seems to be the trend line here, which was something I know in earlier negotiations, that's not what we, nor the union wanted that. So I'm puzzled about the renumbering and moving steps.
I don't think that the concept changed at all from the TA that we had in September as it relates to that.
And I must admit then that I fully didn't understand it. So
Okay.
I realize it this time
Basically,
around.
what it is it's taking the existing differential between steps, which is, I don't know what it was, 3.5% or something like that, and it's shrinking it down into a fixed dollar amount, and it's adjusting people up the grid according to that fixed dollar amount, but still moving them up a year of service step. So they don't get the 3.5% increase, they get the, whatever, $1,450 increase.
So-
But they still move up a year of experience on the grid.
So does that mean step increases as they were known previously with that delta of, say, 3.5% or whatever, those are gone now? Is that it?
That's correct. Well, they're different. They're smaller across the board.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a? I would just like to say at this point, I have a conflict of interest with this contract. I have not been part of any negotiations, any updates. I have not looked at the contract, so that's why I have no comments or questions on this, because I do have a conflict and have always said that. So just to explain the fact that I have no commentary on this. Mr. Kaufman?
One other thing, I have a list of 15 different textual errors that I found in the contract. Who should I give that to?
I would be more than happy to receive that and work with, I have to check with the union, and certainly we'll be able to address those
They're
concerns.
typos. It's just
Okay.
annoying text things.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's right.
Yeah. You want to make a motion to approve it? No, I didn't say, oh. Would you like to make a motion to approve it?
Madam President?
Yes.
I move that the board approve the tentative agreement between the Nashua Board of Education and the Nashua Teachers Union dated September 1st, 2017 through August 31st, 2021.
And I second that motion. Thank you.
Have a first
So-
and a second.
I would like to make an amendment, subject to the textual changes as, we found, subject to the corrections noted tonight.
Ms. Van Twyver?
There's no need for that. Editorial changes can be made. If they're incorrect, that's different.
Dr. Mosley?
We would be more than happy to go through the contract. I agree with Ms. Van Twyver. The purpose of this contract was to get new contractual language in there. If there's typos in there, they probably existed long before this contract was enacted, and if so, we'll certainly make sure that we will address that. But I agree with Ms. Van Twyver on this one.
Thank you. We need a vote.
Yes, vote.
Ms. Hohensee?
Just a question, that mistake that was found in A4, is that going to stay in place or is that going to revert to what it should have been?
In the nurses scale?
Yes.
The nurses scale should be the same as the bachelor's scale. So I found 2 in the nurses scale, and we will make that correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on the motion, Mr. Mosher.
Could
I'm
I
sorry.
please, I'll just reread the motion.
Okay.
There has been a motion to approve the tentative agreement between the Nashua Board of Education and the Nashua Teachers Union dated September 1st, 2017 through August 31st, 2021.
On the motion, Mr. Mosher?
Yes, I said yes.
I'm sorry. Ms. Oden?
I abstain.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
And Mr. Guarino is yes. 7 to 0 and 1 abstention. The motion carries.
Unanimous. Thank you. Could we take a 3-minute recess? Okay. I would like to say that our recess is over and we will resume our meeting. Committee on the Budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Oden. So we will have our first meeting this week. There'll be a presentation, a generalization of the budget, and then we're going to talk about some tools that might be available and overview of the operating budget within this umbrella of the big budget. So, and I think we'll contain ourselves in the 2 hours that we have. Oh, just let me say though, once the budget meetings start, beginning this Wednesday, 2 days from now, they will be continuing on successive Wednesdays. So they become a fixture for us until we're done, just so you know. And somewhere in the middle of that, there'll be a public hearing once we're more final in where we're headed with the proposal. And if I can answer any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Mr. Guarino, Committee on Finance and Operations.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President. I want to thank Mr. Donovan and Dr. Mosley for a very thorough summary of the operating budget and also answering questions on deferred maintenance and capital improvement program. A lot of information there for me to look at. We have one item that we'd like to bring on the floor for the board to approve, and that is a recommendation to accept $10,000 donation for the NHS North Football Program and place it in the Athletic Expendable Trust Fund. I'd like to make a motion to do that.
I'm looking for a second.
I second that.
Okay. Second by Ms. Timmons. And discussion? I would just like to thank the individual who's responsible for this. They wish to remain anonymous. And I would also like to thank the company that this person works for, who also wants to remain anonymous. But this is a very large donation for the program, and I understand they made the same donation last year, so I want to publicly thank this individual.
Okay, on the motion, the vote, Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
And Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
And Mr. Guarino, yes. The motion carries 8 to 0.
Okay. Do you you have any further business? Do
That's
you
it
know when
for-
your next meeting is?
I do, and it's on our schedule. It's in, I think it's February, February 13th, Tuesday, 6:30 PM at the district office. That's our next Finance and Operations Committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. Committee on Policy, and Mr. Kaufman, you chaired that meeting.
Yes, we met. The transcript is not yet available, so that's why we're not presenting it. We have a board rule that we wait for those minutes to become published, and then we pull the motions out of there. So that'll be on the next agenda for approval.
Okay, thank you. Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation.
Thank you, Madam President. I was happy to chair my first meeting on curriculum, and we welcome Ms. Timmons and Ms. Raymond as members this year, and Mr. Guarino is the alternate. The first order of business was to decide whether we would meet at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and from now on, the committee will meet at 6 o'clock on the third Monday of every month. The presentation of by Dr. McKinney was on the programs for the year. There was the ongoing assessment project, which is OGAP, and that the math content team and math steering committee is going to determine the next step to see whether they're going to continue with this or not. He also talked about the Eureka Math, which is a K through 5 program. It's in year 2 of its program, and there will be updates on that. The unit of studies in writing is K through 5. He described that program. It's built on best practices and a proven framework developed over years of work in the units of study and opinion argument. And then we had a talk on, let's see, the Study Sync, which this was an interesting program. Study Sync is a cross-curricular core literacy solution with hundreds of text, dynamic video, and multimedia lessons guaranteed to inspire and advance reading, writing, critical thinking. And that's for grades 6 through 8. There is the middle school science update. The Next Generation Science Standards pilot was done on April 10th, 2017, and there'll be more to talk about that later. A lot of information about OGAP was discussed, and there is, he also presented a roadmap to mathematics curriculum and instruction for changes K through 8. They are in their 3rd semester talking about this, and I would encourage people to go online and look at the document to see what they have planned. They're now in the winter, January-March time frame, and one of the other interesting things that Dr. McKinney mentioned was that the Smarter Balanced Assessment Coalition is no longer, the New Hampshire State is no longer participating in that, and that there is a new program called SAS, which is a state assessment, and he will be giving a presentation in May-ish on that. He also mentioned that our district would be very visible in that determining the new things, that we'll have more say-so in how that thing works anyway. So our next meeting will be the 3rd Monday of next month at 6 o'clock. That's the report.
Thank you so much, Ms. Van Twyver. Committee on Human Resources.
Thank you, Madam President. The Human Resources Committee met earlier this evening to approve some time-sensitive personnel recommendations. I make a motion to approve the personnel recommendations presented at today's Human Resources meeting.
Second. Point of order. We have to override the policy to say that we're accepting this recommendation without minutes. We usually do that when we...
I've sat on Human Resources. I don't ever remember doing that.
Well, at policy, the minutes were not available, we made no recommendations. So this one, we don't have minutes, and we're making a recommendation, so we override our rules, and then we do it if that's the will of the board.
As president, I would prefer that we go by past practice as to what we've done in the past. I've been on Human Resources for 4 years, and I've never seen that done.
I've seen it done several times while I've been on the board for HR.
Human Resources?
It's specifically for HR.
Ms. Van Twyver?
The previous speaker would like to explain what policy it is written that says you don't give a report because there's no minutes? Could you quote the policy for me, please?
I can look it up for you, but we changed the policy since I've been on the board because there was some dispute on the wording of recommendations, the accuracy of them. So we wait until the secretary gets the minutes posted, and that way the recommendations are from the minutes and they're more accurate. You can see it right there on Committee of Policy, minutes not available. So they didn't make the recommendations that were made in committee. We've done this numerous times.
I believe in the past, we often have said we suspend the rules to introduce.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So if you would like to phrase it, Ms. Timmons, I'd like to suspend the rules to introduce motions coming forward from a HR meeting held earlier this evening. That would do.
Thank you, Madam President. I am new. I'd like to just suspend the rules for the Human Resources minutes and go on with the motion that we just have on the floor. The terminology may not be correct, but I do have that motion to approve the recommendation presented at today's meeting.
Second.
The intent is clear. Any discussion?
This is a roll call for the motion to suspend?
And to accept.
No, it's two
They
separate.
have to be separate.
Two separate motions.
That's not what I understood.
Suspend the rules to accept the
The
personnel
personnel
recommendations. So we suspend and accept the personnel recommendations.
Okay. So on the motion, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes?
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee.
Abstain.
I'm sorry?
Abstain.
Okay. Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
And Mr. Guarino is yes, so we have 7 yes, 1 abstention. The motion carries.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to add, thank you.
Ms. Timmons?
Our next Human Resources meeting will be February the 22nd at 5:30 at the district office.
Thank you. Any liaison reports? Okay. Our next item would be unfinished business, and that's a review of the Brentwood Program Committee, and that has to be in non-public. So my apologies to Mr. Cummings. I'm going to ask that we suspend the rules to address items on the agenda out of order, and we have, under new business, the proposal for addition of time to the school day that has to do with making up snow days, and approval of the 2018-19 calendar. I'm looking for a motion to suspend the rules to have the agenda go out of order.
Move to suspend the rules to go out of order.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Okay. Do you want to do a roll call?
On the motion to suspend the rules to go out of order, Mr. Mosher,
I say yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes?
Mr. Guarino, yes.
Horace Howard,
And the motion carries.
the Wicked Witch of the North.
The,
I shut her down.
the motion to suspend the rules.
Okay. Under new business, we will take the proposal for the addition of time to the school day, and Dr. Mosley, I believe, would like to speak to that.
So, again, I'm speaking on snow days, which is, a little bit ironic. We haven't had any, well, I'm not going to say that, I'm going to just be quiet, because I think it's supposed to snow tomorrow. All right, there is no easy way to try to make up days. I mean, I have gone through this 100 times in terms of what is the best approach. So I know in the past that the Nashville Public Schools have implemented time at the end of the day to attempt to recuperate some days that we've used for snow days. Some of the snow days are actually, this year, some of the snow days were actually not snow days. So if you recall, in October 30th, we actually had a day where we had some power outages. I mean, it was a little bit of it felt like a hurricane had come through Nashua. So that technically wasn't a snow day. At any rate, here's our dilemma here. We've had 5 snow days thus far. Now, the snow days were on the 30th of October, December 22nd, January 4th, January 5th, and January 17th. And so we have had a total of 5 snow days thus far. In our schedule, yes, it is correct that we do have a total of 7 built-in days, but at the same time, there are some considerations that we look at when we're trying to recuperate time. So if you're trying to recuperate time, what is the best approach to do this, and why are you doing it? So the first thing is that we were tentatively scheduled to get out of school this year without any snow days on June 13th. Now, because we've had the 5 snow days, our date to get out of school is June 20th. Keep that in mind. Second thing to this is that it's, given the timing, it's February 1st. And so the likelihood of us having another snow day the month of February, and yes, it's March, and for those of you who are alive, yes, April 1st, there was a snow day in 1997. So there's a strong possibility that we could have additional snow days. So if we were to consider adding 14 minutes total, 7 minutes in the beginning of the morning and 7 minutes at the end of the day, we could break that up in terms of recuperating that time that we've missed as a result of snow days. If we were able to do that, then we would end the school year on the 15th. Now, if I'm looking at a calendar for the month of June 2018, it is that week of the 11th. So it's Monday's the 11th, Tuesday is the 12th, Wednesday is the 13th, Thursday is the 14th, and that 15th, what I'm proposing would be the last day of school. Please keep in mind that that's also the week of graduation as well. So the other thing about the snow days with my proposal is that during the month of June, particularly at those later months, certainly it gets a lot hotter. I know that Mr. Guarino and the board had received some communications from a teacher that said, during our time in school, it gets quite hot. It has the opposite effect here. I know it's cold now, but most of our classrooms do not have air conditioning in them. So it benefits our students and our faculty to come up with a reasonable time to recuperate that time. And so they're not in school the last 2 weeks, or in this case, the third week in June. So this is one way of preventing our kids and our faculty from going to school on very, very hot days with non-air conditioned classrooms during the later months in June. So when we broke this up, and again, this is all tentative on the agreement with the bargaining units. I've had some discussions with the NTU and President Marcoux, and certainly this was a conscientious effort to make sure that not all of the teachers that are in the late schools are affected by this snow day, but also it kind of spread it out in a sense that we could have the kind of lessen the impact of making up time at the beginning of the day. If the board decides that they're not going to entertain, this proposal and they want to vote it down, that's their decision. It's just that it pushes our time to release students to June 20th. Please keep in mind that last year when you did the proposal, you started it in March. So that gave you had to make up more time, so that you had to add another minute or sometimes 16 minutes. So by instituting it earlier, you actually have more time to work off the snow days. That's kind of the gist of it. There's no easy way to get around this. It is likely, I hope I'm terribly wrong, that there's going to be another snow day. Certainly, we look for solutions to problems that are presented to us, and this is our attempt to rectify that. I like snow days, my kids love snow days, but sometimes you have to pay the piper on this one, and this is how he's going to get paid, I guess. I'm sorry.
Okay. It is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. O'Hensy?
I'd move to add 14 minutes at the end of the school day, otherwise as the superintendent recommends.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
May I speak to it?
Yes, I'm sorry, you may speak to it.
Last year, we had a lot of people come in and they talked, and that seemed to be the consensus of parents and teachers. So rather than get people upset, we've already heard from our 2 students that they would prefer that. Unless something has changed from last year, I'd like to go with the same methodology.
Okay, any other board members? Mr. Mosier?
I think that is a reasonable assumption that we do that in that particular way.
I have a board member, Mr. Gillis.
Yeah, I know in previous years, like she said, there was the 14 minutes added to the end of the school day. Why was the 7 minutes to the beginning of the school day implemented or proposed this year instead?
Do you want to speak to that, Dr. Mosley?
I don't understand the question. The 7 minutes?
Yeah, why was it changed from just 14 minutes at the end of the school day that we had in previous years to 7 minutes at the beginning and 7 minutes at the end?
So you're wondering why we decided to do it, to break it up? Yeah. Okay, so there are some people, and this isn't me, but part of talking about this and proposing it, you try to get to win-win with the union, you try to get to win-win with the custodians, you try to get to win-win with the food service. So the afternoon pieces have a pretty negative impact on teachers that work in the late schools. Understand that there are schools that are not aligned or don't get out as early as the high school. So the feeling might be, well, I'm just making kind of up a number really quickly here. It's now 3:30, I'm ready to go, but yet the feeling is now it's 3:45. And 3:45 for the rest of the school year can sometimes be a little bit of a burden for some of our parents our teachers who are parents who probably want to transition home as soon as possible and not wait that extra, feels like 14 minutes and 15 minutes after school. The other piece too, and for some of you who are morning people, it gives you a great opportunity to get up nice and early, get yourself a nice cup of Morning Joe, read a book, take the trash out on Friday where I live, and certainly you'll get better prepared to get ready for school. So there's no easy way around this, and some people are like, listen, I think the morning works out well for me because I can just be prepared and get myself going. So for some, they prefer the morning because it's better, and I'm going to use the analogy, they can probably, staying 7 minutes later in the day is a lot harder than getting early, coming to school earlier in the day is easier than staying 7 minutes later. It all depends on your preference. So I had some discussions around this proposal tentatively with the union, and this seemed to be a compromise.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I remember the discussions from last year, as Ms. Hohensee alluded to. I remember parents speaking to, they've got this routine going in the morning. It's taken them, well, from September to February, to get the kids in that groove, and even 5 or 7 minutes still disrupts the household. And I have no disagreement with the need to do the 14 minutes, and I'm glad we're doing it earlier than later, and contingency planning is always a good thing. But I would recommend we go with the afternoon, as our students have proposed. And Dr. Mosley, and to the board, I would go further. The good news is we're talking about this early. So can we wait another meeting and perhaps reach out to the parents and see what they have to say? Because they're the ones who have to wake the kids up and get them out of the house and get them to a bus stop or drop them off. So I would perhaps suggest to the board that we consider, see if there's a way to survey the parents, send home a flyer asking what they want, and have an informed decision that includes the parent voice.
I have a comment on this.
Okay, Mr. Mosher?
Yeah, at the present time, what we are facing is basically a crapshoot because, Mother Nature does not always follow the rules. And I can recall when my kids were ready to go to Maine Dunstable that we had to, on the bathroom door, we had to take a number to get through, especially my daughter with her long hair. So I think we have to, go with something that seems logical now, but is subject to, what would you say, adjustment because of the vagaries of the weather that may come about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mosher. Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I have 3 things, basically. One, if we were to vote today to extend it in the afternoon, as the motion is now, instead of what Dr. Mosley proposed, will we need to go back to the NTU and renegotiate that before we can implement that? 2, if we have more days, which I'm sure we will, are we just at that point going to add them? So instead of being the 20th, it would go to the 22nd or 21st or 22nd. And then would we come back and talk about, well, maybe we need 15 or 16 minutes? And then the third thing that I just wanted to point out is, having read this over the weekend, today my children do karate. I took an informal poll of the parents at karate, which is not a representative sample of all of Nashua. But generally the consensus was everyone would rather have extra time than extra days. I didn't have to speak to a single person who was like, no, let my kids stay in. But the parents were pretty much split. Of the couple dozen I spoke to, like 75% of them said they would rather have the 7 and 7, which surprised me because as a parent, I was not feeling that way. And about a quarter of them said they'd rather have the afternoon. And the reason that was explained to me by these parents was that 7 minutes seemed to be a small impact on their morning, whereas 15 minutes in the afternoon had an impact on after-school jobs, after-school activities, especially for those of us who have kids in the later schools. I know for my kids, they have stuff starting at 4, so if they get home, if they leave school at 3:45, now we're talking about no snack, we just go directly there as opposed to like having time for stuff. So those are just my questions and thoughts.
Madam President, do you mind if I respond?
Dr. Mosley?
To Ms. Thank you. The answer to your question, you said, would we have to go back and get the approval from the union? The answer is yes. Right. And it's a little bit complicated in the sense that there are multiple bargaining units. So it's yes with the NTU, yes with custodians, yes with food services, secretaries, and there's about 4 bargaining units. The other thing too, if we wait, if that's the board's decision, that's fine. But understand the way that this is configured right now and the way that, it's proposed tentatively, pending board approval, we get 3 days. So I can confidently say that last week, the week of the 18th, the 19th, and the 20th in June, we would be recuperating those days based on this proposal. So school would get out that Friday, the 15th.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying? See that? So, technically, that's the last week of school. All right?
Okay.
So waiting, that kind of recalculates the time that would be recuperated, and I don't know where the board would go in that. I'm looking out in the audience here, I think where the union is a little bit more palpable, and again, I haven't had this discussion with Adam yet around breaking it up, because I think it affects the high school very differently than it affects the elementary school. It's just the way that it kind of works a little bit. And you had a third question, I'm sorry, I didn't know if I answered.
Ms. Hohensie and then Ms.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, he just asked what my third question had been. Oh, and the third question was just if we have additional snow days, we're just going to tack them on then and start the next week? Or would we come back to the table and say, we need more time?
So if we have if there's no action?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, if,
Did I interrupt?
for example, we approved it today and we said, yes, let's move forward, we're adding 14 minutes, however we decide to do it. And in February, we have 2 snow days. Does that then mean that we add those snow days to the end of the year? We have these extra time plus 2 days? Or do we come back then in February or March and say, we're going to add more time again?
No, we wouldn't add more time, because what the state is looking for is for the district to show that it's making an effort to make up those days that we propose. So in a sense, we're doing our due diligence and being prudent and showing the state that we're making up those days in terms of hours, so we would be covered.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hohensie, just a minute, have you spoken to this, because Mr. Guarino hasn't spoken to it?
My motion, so I spoke briefly.
Okay, Mr. Guarino.
Yeah, this is seems to be a simple thing, but it's actually not. Because, the 14 minutes at the end, I mean, we have to make a decision, and I think no matter what decision we make, someone's going to be unhappy, but that's why we're here, is to make difficult decisions, and we have to make some people unhappy and make a decision. And I think we should make it today, and I know it's nice to go out and try to find out what's on people's minds and do this, but time is of the essence, so I think we have to make a decision today. And I'm kind of torn between the 7 minutes on each end or the 14. But I know even 14 minutes on one end, it even affects traffic also, so people are, and it affects people's schedules. And if you add 7 minutes in the morning, it actually affects people's schedules in the morning, as Dr. Mosley said. So for the sake of moving this on, and I would support 7 minutes in the morning and 7 minutes in the afternoon. Make some people unhappy, but I think we have to make this decision. So.
Ms. Hohensie?
Thank you. I'm looking at my phone at the sunrise and sunset. Sunrise is 7:02. Sunset is 4:55 p.m. The high school students are out there in the dark. Eventually, it'll get brighter. They're out there at 6:30. So you're asking them to go even earlier, which means they'll be in the dark longer. And I know they meet on busy streets, so they have to cross over, get to the bus stop. I think it's a safety issue to increase more students out on our bus stops before it is daylight. And for me, that's the way I'm going to vote in terms of safety. I would rather that they go out there where there's daylight so they don't get hit by cars.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. There was something else that came up last year that we had to deal with sort of hurriedly, where certain, and Mr. Donovan, you might remember where I'm going to head here. We had to pay people, because of the number of snow days and the number of days that people worked, they didn't work their full year. He's nodding yes, so thank you, I'm on the right track. So we actually had to pay a whole lot of employees for days they did not work. So Mr. Donovan, perhaps you remember it better than I, if you could brief the board on what that issue was.
Yes, with the number of snow days we had last year, and we did this late in the game, we did, much to my chagrin, pay people for doing nothing. Hourly salaried people were paid 2 days. Hourly salary, that's poorly worded. Hourly staff were paid 2 days and they didn't work. We're not going to go there at this point this year. Hopefully that won't happen, but we were butting up against graduation last year. And as I said before, I got to find $100,000. I don't need to pay for something that people aren't doing, so I hope we won't get there this year. But we did in fact pay many of the hourly people that work in the school district 2 days last year that they didn't have to work.
And wasn't there also a problem with the principals not having enough days? And, I mean, there was other something else I thought that,
No,
anyway.
they were okay.
The good news is if we do it early enough, we won't face that again.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Thank you.
Okay, if nobody else, I have a couple of questions. Well, I have one question for Dr. Mosley. Will you be applying to the state for a waiver for any of our snow days?
So, a couple things. With the whole waiver piece is that you do not need a waiver as long as you meet the minimum hours required. So if we make up the time, it's a timing issue, not necessarily days. So it gets a little complicated because we hear waiver all the time. So if the state, the way that this is constructed right now, with the added 14 minutes at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, we meet the minimum requirements for the school year in terms of hours. So we wouldn't necessarily need to apply for a waiver.
Okay, thank you. I guess for me, I think the earlier we start, whatever way we choose to make up the time is important. So I would like to make a decision tonight. The one thing I heard, and I think probably Mr. Marcoux could speak to this, is my understanding that there were teachers last year who had the last period class or classes at the end of the day, and they felt the burden of making up the time was on them. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's one comment I heard. I would think it would be more of a distraction and an inconvenience for anybody that had a child that was doing something, whether it's dance or music lessons or doctor's appointments, to have 15 or 14 minutes at the end of the day rather than 7. Same thing in the morning if a parent has to go to work, and that was some of the concern last year about leaving students early in the morning. I think 7 minutes is much more manageable for parents. So I will support the superintendent's recommendation of 7 minutes on either end of the day. So could we suspend the rules and get Mr. Marcoux's recommendation and his, because he does have a lot of the teachers that have given him feedback. Is there a problem, or can we have a consensus? Okay, consensus. We would like to hear your input.
Adam Marcoux, President of the Teachers Union. So the concern from the 6 late elementary schools is that the burden is strictly placed on them by adding the time all to the end of the day. So 14 minutes may not seem a lot when your dismissal's at 2:03 or 3 o'clock. When you're at a late school, dismissal gets pushed back to 3:39. And being the late schools, your buses are never on time. And then you're looking at dismissal ending at 4 o'clock. And that is where the concern came from with the 14 minutes at the end of the day. We looked at 14 minutes at the beginning of the day. It's not feasible, and I understand that. The feedback that I have heard has been varied, but the most support that I've heard so far is 7 minutes on either end of the school day. And that way, the burden is equally shared amongst the 17 schools, if you will, whether you're high school, middle school, or elementary school. So is it all right if I clarify something Ms. Raymond asked?
Absolutely.
About going to the union? So Dr. Mosley is presenting tonight. Whatever the outcome is from the board tonight, I will go tomorrow, prepare ballots and voting for all 1,600 members of the Nashua Teachers Union. So teachers have to vote, food service, secretaries, and paraeducators will vote Wednesday in their schools, depending on the outcome of tonight. If one of those units says no, that they don't want to do this, none of it happens. It all goes away, and we have to come back and look at something else. So that will take place Wednesday. That is as fast as I can get this done, because we talked about 7 and 7, but I didn't want to prep things if there was a different motion that came from the board and then have to throw that away and start from scratch. So that's the process. Every time we tweak a workday, all 1,600 members have to vote to do that. And I need 50% plus one saying yes from all 4 units to implement this.
Thank you very much for clarifying much of that and giving us your input. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay. Okay, the motion on the floor, I believe, made by Ms. O'Hensy and seconded by Mr. Kaufman, is to add 14 minutes to the end of the school day, starting February. Did you have a start date for that?
It's tentatively
No.
February 5th.
February 5th.
Right.
Okay.
And that's tentative.
Everybody understand the motion? Okay.
Okay, on the vote on the motion, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
No.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
No.
Ms. Timmons,
No.
Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
No.
and Mr. Guarino votes no. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noes, 1, 2, 3, 3 yeses. So the motion fails.
Does anybody have another motion? Ms. Timmons?
I'd like to make a motion that we add 7 minutes in the morning and 7 minutes in the evening.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Raymond. Any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll?
Mr. Mosher, on the new motion, sir?
I should reread it.
For me?
The motion is to add 7 minutes to the beginning and to the end of the day, starting February 2nd, did you say?
February 5th.
5th, I'm sorry, February 5th. Mr. Mosher?
February 5th, yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yeses and 2 noes. The motion carries.
Okay. So we will be adding, at this point, Mr. Marcoux will be going to his membership and getting back to the superintendent as soon as possible with his union membership's opinion on this, or their vote on this. Thank you. Okay. The second order of business we have before we go into non-public is the approval of the 2018-19 school calendar.
Can I speak to it, Madam President?
Yes, you may speak.
There is no change.
Can I move to adopt the calendar and get it second?
I'm happy to move to accept the calendar for the 2018-19 year.
Second.
Any discussion?
I can be quiet.
No, please speak, but
No, I just wanted to be clear, there's no significant changes in this calendar. Basically, it's just the same calendar that we have today, this year, except that the days have just kind of followed suit with a new year. That's all I wanted to say.
Mr. Kaufman?
I know how difficult calendars are. I'm just curious by what you said, though, Dr. Mosley. This shows,
So if you look at the,
what you said was, it's the same calendar as this year, which is what, 7 days, but there are 10 makeup days on this calendar, is there?
no. So what I meant by, like, for instance, if you just jump down to June of 2019, so the last day of school this year is, like what I talked about, is like that 15th, right? See that at the end? So this calendar has June 14th. So any of those days can be makeup days. So you can have, those last 2 weeks, same thing we have here, can be used as makeup days.
Okay, so when is the actual high school graduation?
Tentatively scheduled on that 15th.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? I will add, I appreciated the fact, must be the teacher in me, that last year we had a 4-day week, maybe Veterans Day or one of those weeks where we had 4 school days, and we also had an early release for teachers, and that only left teachers 3.5 days to get their work done, and that bothered me. So I was glad to see that there's no conflict like this on the calendar, and I will certainly support it.
Could I just add, sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to add one thing. I just want to thank the NTU for giving me feedback as well. Thank Garth, and of course, Tara Kinsella for really going through this, because we do have a primary this year, and so that adds yet another variable into creating this schedule. So it's the team that really did a nice job. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that. So thank you to all of them who helped out on this one.
Okay. So at this point, I am looking to go into non-public under unfinished business.
We have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's all right. It's all right.
I am so sorry. Getting late.
Quite all right.
10. Okay, thank you. Okay.
On the vote on the motion, do you want me to read the motion? Or?
Could you please read the motion?
The motion is to approve the 2018-2019 school calendar. Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
And Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
And Mr. Guarino votes yes. And the motion carries 8-0.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to recommend that we do public comments and board member comments before we go into non-public, because I don't want the public waiting.
I see Mr. Cummings agreeing to that. Thank you very much, appreciate that. In light of the fact that the board does have a non-public session, it's 9:45. Could you please keep your public comments fairly brief? It would be appreciated. 3 to 5 minutes, if possible. Thank you. I have one person signed up for this, Paula Johnson.
Good evening again. My name is Paula Johnson, still living at 15 Westbourne Drive here in Nashua. Haven't moved yet. I I have a couple of concerns here. On Facebook, one of your board members was a little bit rude. I think bordering on the,
Sorry, just a minute. Mr. Mosher, were you speaking to us? I don't think so. I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson.
I think bordering on the defamation of character assassination here. I've informed Mr. Garino, hey, Ray, now that you're elected official, your comments need to be professional because words can come back to bite you. He proceeded to say, Paula, I'm not too worried that there is a whole lot of people who will disagree with me regarding the bizarre nature of your thought process. I'm sure you will make up some kind of fairy tale about my words anyway. I've never met you. I don't even know who you are. Even when you ran, what was it, like 2 years ago? I never met you. So why would I go into an attack mode on you? I don't understand. It was a conversation about money for schools. And I stated that if the federal government paid their fair share for special ed, a lot of districts wouldn't be in this situation that they're in. And that's the truth. So you then responded, what planet does Paula Johnson live on? I live on Earth. You live on Earth, I live on Earth. Again, I don't know you. Excuse me, I have the floor.
Wait just a minute.
Thank you. You can respond. You can say whatever you want. Things never get deleted off of Facebook, ever, ever. Because when you take pictures, it's around forever. And then our schools are in deplorable condition. Paula owes our teachers and our school administrators an apology for disparaging their success. I never said anything about their success. I never said a thing about the teachers. Hard work and dedication, that wasn't even in the subject because I was addressing the Performing Arts Center. And I was saying that we're going to spend $15.5 million on a Performing Arts Center when we have 2 schools in deplorable condition. We all know about that. Mr. Cummingswood even knows about that. He works in the mayor's office. So, Mr. Garino, before you do something, do your homework. I'm very good at researching and doing my homework. I'm always prepared. So, October 16th, 2017, I pulled this back when? And it talked about 2 of our schools. Yes, Mrs. Van Twyver, it talks about Elm Street and Mount Pleasant, the condition that those 2 schools are in. You all know about the condition of those 2 schools, because my argument about the Performing Arts Center has been schools or downtown Performing Arts Center, which is more important? We don't have the $4 million for that. We've got a school that's $10 million and another one that was about $5 million. It's about 16.
60.
Thank you.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Ms. Van Twyver, do you have a point of order?
Yeah, point of order. We don't have any control over what's said in Facebook. Why are you bringing this to us?
Excuse me, this is public comment time, so I have the right to bring this because this is your board member. That's right, you don't have control, but he's supposed to be professional and held to a higher standard than an ordinary person in the community. He's been elected, he is getting paid with my tax dollars, and he shouldn't be mouthing off like that, and other people commented about how rude he was on that Facebook. It had to do with education. It talked about people that shouldn't be elected because of the way they were voted. But the issue was, my issue talked about the schools. So maybe you don't have control, but you're going to have control because he's an elected official sitting in that chair, and when he walks out that door, he's elected by the people of the city, whether I voted for him or not. He is an elected official. And they're held to a higher standard. When I was elected, I never treated a constituent like this, whether I liked what they said or not, but back then we didn't have Facebook, and we didn't have the internet. But if anybody came before my boards that I sat on, my answer was, thank you for bringing the information to our attention. Thank you very much. Whether I liked them or not, I was always polite. So here's your homework to read about this, Mr. Guarino, about the schools that you attacked me on. I'm not from another planet. I'm not from outer space. I'm from Nashua, and my taxes pay your salary, your stipend, actually. And then when we sit here tonight and we talk about the contract, unfortunately, some of us in the public did not get it, but I took some notes down on the paper. And I guess what bothers me here, as we start running through the numbers here, there was a question here in the Telegraph. The Telegraph I want you to see because I don't want you to think that I'm making up these stories. Data shows Nashua School District spends less for lower results. And we see the amount of money that is spent per pupil. And one must ask ourselves, if in language arts, the New Hampshire Department of Education shows that 25% of Nashua students are at level 1 or novice level in English language arts and 31% in mathematics. The state average was 18 and 20% respectively. The level 2 averages are close together at 24% and 23% for state and English and 29 for the district and 31 for statewide. Clearly, the question has to be asked. As a taxpayer of this city, former board member, with all the money we spend on education, why aren't we getting better results for our children in the system? That's the question. So I hear tonight, I take notes of all these step increases. I guess by the time the teachers reach the top step, as I'm trying to follow and take little notes here, which is a little bit hard, especially when you don't have a paper. I guess the top of it's going to be about $98,000 a year, average, the average.
With
Well, it's-
benefits, yes.
With benefits, okay, thank you, with benefits. But it's very hard to comprehend and do all this when you don't have the paper to actually see a spreadsheet. But as I see the steps, and I hear Mr. Donovan talk about this year, you have $1.7 million in the budget out of the $2.1 million that's needed to finance the contracts. You might get grants up to $125,000. Is that what I kind of heard? And then you're going to need, and through attrition, and then you'll probably need to find another $100,000 to fund it. And then you're looking at the other years in the contract. Well, next year's the budget, you'll fund it in the budget. And then the year after, you got to hope that the economy and everything's good, that you can fund it again, and you can keep funding it. Question is, $100,000, are we going to rob Peter to pay Paul to fund the contract? If you don't have the money, how do you sign on a dotted line for a contract? That's the question of a person who's been a business owner. I get math. I'm not brilliant in it, but I get it. Done the budgets. How do you fund something for this year when you don't have that money? So now you've got to take it away from whatever is needed in the classroom. That's why our curriculum is never updated, because we're funding. And the bottom line is, when you give these salaries of added, I know my husband for 8 years never got a raise. I hear them say, oh, it's only like $600, $250 for the year. My husband got to zero in 8 years, if not longer, because his company couldn't afford to do it. They can't ask taxpayers, give me. So the question becomes, when you hear all these numbers, how much the salary is, you have to add in the cost. The real cost of these salaries is when you add in the benefits on top of it. That is the real cost of the salaries, because it's the salaries and benefits is what these teachers are getting. Paycheck and the year. So if the benefits now are $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year, That's the real cost that is costing us, whether it's on the school district side or the city side. It doesn't matter. It's all going to come from the same pot eventually. The taxpayers are paying for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Is there anybody else who did not sign up who would like to speak?
Me. Adam Marcoux, 4 Jalori Lane. I'm president of the Nashua Teachers Union. There was a question asked during the negotiations presentation, and I just want to clarify. So there was a question, and I believe Ms. Hohensee asked about letters of recommendation and the like. So there was some confusion surrounded that in the answer that was given, and I just want to clarify. In September, the union voted to stop doing letters of recommendation, field trips, and I can't remember the other two off the top of my head, if on the next negotiating session we did not reach a tentative agreement. That next meeting, we did reach a tentative agreement, and those objects were wiped off. That vote was nullified. So the only thing that has been going on since this contract expired in September, prior to tonight, was that members were choosing not to sit on district and school-wide committees. That's the only thing that the union has done from the beginning and ended tonight. So I just needed to clarify that because it was implied that there was several other things that weren't being done by members because we didn't have a contract, and that is not the case. So I needed to clarify that. I want to thank the board for ratifying the contract unanimously tonight. I think that sends a message to the membership. I know there were some details that need to be corrected maybe, and some punctuation or grammar or typos that we'll look at. But it was important to me to have the support of the board from all of you to move this forward to the Board of Aldermen. And on behalf of the union, I appreciate your vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marcoux. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? At this time, I'm looking, Ms. Hohensee?
Can we do board member comments and then go into non-public?
I think we could do board member comments at the end. It is 10 o'clock. We have Mr. Cummings here, and I think we need to do that. We certainly can do our board member comments at the end.
It's gonna
That would be my
videographed?
suggestion.
I mean, we're going to keep the videographer?
Mr. Videographer, can you stay after the non-public session? Thank you. Yes, we will keep the videographer. So I'm looking for a motion to go into non-public under,
I'll make a motion to go into non-public. Under
consideration or negotiated pending claims or litigation. Oh, we have to state what we're going in under.
We're going under unfinished business. No, we're
No,
not.
RSA.
Oh, we're going RSA? Okay.
Yeah. It has to do with, what, Ms. O'Gara, what in the past have we gone under? Because it has to do with
I
negotiations.
think it would be 91A32C.
No.
That's what we use for contracts,
CRE.
Oh, that's not it.
So not knowing what the matter is, maybe it's not a subject for non-disclosure.
Excuse me, I know what it is, and we need to do it in non-public. It has to do with the negotiations, and if you put everything out on the floor and it's in public, then you lose your ability to negotiate Ms. O'Hensi?
Move to go into non-public under RSA 91A3 2E.
Yeah, that's right.
E.
Second.
Okay.
Consideration of negotiations.
Okay. I'm looking for a second. Okay. Any discussion? No. Okay. Has to be a roll call.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohen?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino, yes. Motion carries 8-0
Time.
Okay, thank you.
at 10 p.m.
RSA 91A3
RSA 91A311E.
Thank you.
2.
No, 3.3. We went in under 2E. We're sealing under 3.3.
Looking
you.
for a second.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Is he
Mr. M-
taping yet?
Yes.
Oh, I'm
Did he
sorry.
turn it on?
It's taping
Jimmy,
time.
are you with us yet? He's good. Okay.
Who seconded that motion?
Me.
Miss Raymond. We'll need a roll call.
Okay, roll call to seal the minutes. Mr. Mosher?
Yes,
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino, yes. The motion carries.
Okay.
Move to adjourn
Did,
at 11? I don't.
okay.
We kept Jim here for nothing? All right.
Okay. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second.
Okay. 2 seconds. Okay.
Motion to adjourn was made by who?
Ms. O'Hensi,
Ms. Hohensie, okay.
seconded by Ms. Richard.
Richard Raymond.
Raymond,
No,
thank
Mrs.
you.
Timmons.
Second time.
It was Mrs. Timmons this time, though.
Sorry.
It's okay. We both have voices that carry.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Appreciate.
We're going to vote the
That
roll
was by
call
unanimous.
to adjourn. We need that roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call to adjourn. Mr. Mosher?
yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons? Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino, yes. Meeting is adjourned at 11:10.